Now, your mother also didn't have a lot of respect, perhaps is the word, for education.
Well, she went to 2 years in grammar school, and then had to quit. And all the people in those ages, and even in America, they quit early in school to work on the farm, using as farm labor. There wasn't the privilege of going to school continuously, except if you were a rich person, a rich child.
And so when you graduated from high school, what did she say to you?
She said, okay, now you're graduated, go to work.
Go to work.
Go to work. 3 words. That was my instruction.
That was your
But
path.
I already had plans to join in the Air Force, or Army Air Force. And so I knew it. And I went down to see the president of American Airlines, and he said, if I go to the military mechanic, air mechanic school, he would give me a job when I came out. And that's what my plan was. Unfortunately, my plan was cut short because of the war.
So World War II changed things, and you had enlisted in the Army Air Corps. And this really began a lifetime of you moving from one place to another.
Yes. I was impetuous, I guess. When I learned something, I wanted to do something different. And in those days, you could volunteer for another job. You can't do it now, but in those days you could. And after 2 years, when I learned what I was doing, I was bored with it, and I volunteered for another job. And I kept getting, first I was a mechanic, airplane mechanic, and then I was an instrument mechanic, and then I was a power turret mechanic, and then I was a flight engineer.
We've got a couple pictures of you here from days in the past. A very proud man in the uniform.
Yeah, this first picture's, I joined in 1939, I joined the Civilians Military Training Program. As a civilian, you were never really a soldier, but I worked for 2 months in summertime as a soldier, artillery, field artillery. We had horse-drawn French 75 guns, and I learned a little bit about taking care of, not much, taking care of horses. And what I learned in my 2 months with the camp was, and I wanted to get into the air.
In your time in the Army Air Corps, you had an opportunity to meet a couple of famous people along the way.
Yeah, I accidentally met, one day when I was working, they said, Sergeant Rigan, take these men out to the hangar and we have some wall lockers to move. I said, sure, of course. I had to, And I lined them up and marched them to the hangar. We had a huge hangar, blimp hangar. And the man in the front of the tallest man there was Jimmy Stewart.
Wow.
And I was embarrassed. I was a sergeant and he was a private. But he cooperated, and we all did our work. And as soon as they got through, then I released them. That's the only time I saw him. Next day he made corporal, acting corporal they called it.
And you also met a president.
Yeah, Kennedy. We were out in an alert. This is later on in my military life. We were out in alert, and they said everybody fall out and line up in front of the headquarters. Well, we were supposed to be on alert. That means you're not supposed to get away from our building in case they call the alarm, which was 3 minutes for us to take off from our facility. So it was very unusual that they would, and so we were all dressed raggedy, not raggedy, but wrinkled. And here was the president and he was only on the ground there about 8 minutes, and he said, "Who are those men standing over there?" And they said they're alert people. They're on alert to fly away if need be. And he came over and shook all our hands. And when he shook my hand, the cameraman took a picture, and then his camera broke.
Ah.
He never got another picture. He was so angry. So I'm the only one he got a picture of.
But it is a lot like your life, in the right place at exactly the right time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, you, speaking of being the right man for the job, you had quite an adventure in the air. You were in a B-36.
Yes.
And I'm with Otto Rigan here. We're talking with the author of his book, Mucki and I. And we're talking about one of your most harrowing adventures when you were in the Army Air Corps. And you're in the air in a B-36 when there's a landing gear problem.
Yes, it was what they call a maximum effort. That means we were to take off in 3 minutes apart, fully loaded with dummy atomic bombs and fully fueled, pretending we were to go into Russia. We never went there, but we spent enough time in the air to equivalent of that trip. And so the airplanes were very heavy. And it was in the middle of the morning, so it was very dark, and we took off in Guam, and at the end of the runway, the flap broke. It broke on takeoff and put the airplane out of lateral control. And the only thing that saved us from crash landing was the end of the cliff. It was a 500-foot cliff.
Wow.
Before you get to the water. So we were able to dive 500 feet down very gently and get in control of the airplane and then take up and continue on our mission. Well, we didn't continue on. We told the control tower what the problem was. We didn't know. We didn't know what the problem was. And then we stayed around and burned up the gas and salvoed the atomic bombs in the ocean and landed later that. I as the first engineer, my captain in the ship said, I don't order you to go out there, but you can go out there and look and see what's wrong. The whole area, it was a place in the wing where you could crawl into.
Yes.
You could crawl in during flight. You could crawl in behind the engines, so there's a crawl space. But the crawl space I went to was full of hydraulic. All the hydraulic fluid in the airplane was in that particular spot. So he knew that, and I did too. But it was my duty to see to get the gear down, because we couldn't land with one gear up and one gear down. You can't do anything with that situation. So I spent, I was determined it wasn't going to beat me, and I spent the whole day out there doing all sorts of things that I tried. I tried everything, and he said, "Come on in, we're going to bail out." I said, "Let me try once more." And I noticed that I ratcheted up. I hooked a ratchet onto the gear and and it moved just slightly. I stuck a screwdriver in it, and then I ratcheted it up again, and the gap was larger, and I pushed the screwdriver in farther, and finally the gear let down. And then we didn't have any we didn't have any brakes, we didn't have any flaps, we didn't have steering wheel, we didn't have no steering, and we landed safely, but very ruggedly, and that was the end.
Wow. You received an award for this, some recognition.
Yeah, it's I got the Air Medal for the action. The airplane was sent back to Fort Worth to be repaired. It cost $800,000 to fix it.
Wow. That was some damage.
That was some damage.